What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the knife shop. So we were recently contacted by a local organization that each fall this organization hosts a charity auction with all the proceeds from that auction going to local charitable organizations. And we were asked if we would be willing to donate a knife for this auction to help raise funds for these charities. And of course we said yes, we'd be willing to do that, be happy to do that. So that's what this episode is going to be about. We're going to figure out the design for this knife and figure out the handles we're going to use and start building this thing. Okay, so what we're going to do on this knife, I've got a couple of designs here. It's going to be kind of a hybrid. We've got this design here, and I've actually already made this knife. I really like the design of it. I've made this knife here. This is for a different project, but I think we're going to reuse this template for this auction knife. Kind of want to have being in Texas here, we kind of want to have a Western kind of a feel to the knife, kind of a rugged outdoorsman kind of a knife. So I think what we're going to do is take this knife and kind of mesh it with this knife. So we're going to use the handle off of this knife and put it on here. I think that'll look really nice for this particular project. So I'll take you over here and show you what I've got going on for handles. Alright, so this is what I got going for this knife. I think we're going to use these black ash burl with some red heart for this area of the handle. And I'm going to go ahead and put some white liners. I really like these white liners. It makes it pop against a dark blade because this will be acid stone washed. And we'll probably go ahead and put some white spacers in between. I think that'll look really nice on that knife with these style handles. And I've got some little brass pins here too that I think will work really well for these pins. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and get these scales cut down to the length we need. Get the liners and spacers glued up so those can be setting up while we're doing other things, profiling the knife. And when we get to the point where we're ready to put handles on, this part will already be done. Alright, so I don't really want to waste a lot. I know I'm going to have way too much handle material here for what I need. And I don't really want to waste these white liners, so I went ahead and cut these liners down. If we put these together, you can see what I'm talking about. Went ahead and cut these down to be just long enough for what we need, and that way we're not wasting this much of it. I can use that for some bolsters or a two-tone handle on a separate knife. So I'm going to go ahead and mark the length of this spacer here, and I'll do that on both blanks, and I'm just going to cut that to length. Okay, I've got both of these cut to length, and I just went ahead and hit these real quick on the belt sander just to get them real smooth, to get rid of those saw marks. And I went ahead and sanded these as well, so they're nice and flush. Should make a nice fit. Did that on both of them. So next thing I'm going to do is cut the spacers that we're going to use. This is just white G10, and I'm just going to simply mark how much material we're going to need here. I'm just going to trace it with a Sharpie. That should give us an idea of what we need. This one didn't turn out too well, but we can still see that line. There we go. Now you can cut these on the bandsaw. If you don't have a bandsaw, little trick you can do that works great on this stuff is you can cut it with just a razor blade and a ruler. I'm going to go ahead and mark out the second one here just so we know exactly how much we're going to need. Okay. So you can cut this with just a razor blade. Actually works pretty good. It's a nice clean straight cut. Just score it, I don't know, half a dozen times or so with your razor blade. And it'll break right off where you scored it. Just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these down to the right length, and I'll be back when I get that done. Alright, I've got these cut to the right length, and the next thing I'm going to do is take our liners, and I'm just going to scuff them up. I've got some 80 grit sandpaper. You can also use, you know, anything. This is a scribing tool, drill bit, anything along those lines, just to rough this up. So when you go to epoxy it, that epoxy will have something to stick to. So I'm going to rough these up. I'm also going to rough up the back of these. We're going to glue this down to that. We're going to rough these up as well. Put it in here for our spacer, and then glue this down like that. So I think that's going to make a nice looking handle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll probably fast forward this part because let's face it, it's pretty boring. So we've got the handles glued up. Just going to let these sit for a few hours, make sure the epoxy is nice and dry. This is 30-minute epoxy, but it usually takes 2 or 3 hours to fully harden and set up. So we'll let those dry up while we're working on profiling the knife. So we'll get that traced out onto some steel, get it cut out, and get started profiling while these are setting up. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and scribe our template onto some steel. I've just taken some blue Dicom layout fluid. This comes in a little applicator bottle with a kind of a cotton tip. And just mark your steel with that. We'll take our template, lay it on the steel, and I just like to hold it in place with some welder's magnets. And we're just going to trace it out. We'll just take it over to the bandsaw and cut this out. Okay, so we're just going to take the blank over here to the 2x72 grinder and clean up all the rough marks left by the bandsaw. And we're just going to grind it down straight to the scribe line and get it cleaned up. Okay, so we got it cleaned up, and the next step is we're just going to mark the location for our pins on our handle. So we'll get back over to where the scales are and we'll mark those locations. Okay, so our handles are set up now. Epoxy is dried, and what I've done to be able to mark the locations of our pins, I've just taken our drawing and I made a copy of it, so because I need to change the handle to match this one. I didn't want to ruin my original drawing, so I just made a copy of the original, and then I've modified it to match the handle that we're going to do. So just going to take this template again and lay it back on our blank, and now we can mark the location of our pinholes. I'm just going to center punch those and we'll get those drilled out. Okay, so I went ahead and cut our pins that we're going to be using. This is a 3/8 lanyard tube, 1/4 inch mosaic pin, and a couple of 3/32 inch brass pins. I'm just going to take these, I've cut them to length, I'm just going to deburr them. I just like to use this little 1x30 belt sander for that. It's about the only thing I use it for anymore, but it's really good for taking these burrs off your pin stock. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. It cleans them up real nice. Now I'm just going to take it over to the drill press and we'll drill out the pinholes in the knife blank.